Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video. My next guest, he needs no introduction. It's the legendary Adam Glass. Adam is a producer and writer. I personally know him best for his work in the Suicide Squad. If you're a comic book fan, odds are you've read his work. He worked in the Suicide Squad during the New 52, and it's one of my favorite runs. He is responsible for adding everyone's favorite member, Harley Quinn herself, to the Suicide Squad. And his run included characters such as Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, King Shark, El Diablo, Yo-Yo, Voltaic, Harley Quinn, Black Spider, and so much more. But besides his work in the Suicide Squad, he's also worked in comic books such as the Teen Titans and other comic books such as Deadpool and Luke Cage, Rough Rider and Lollipop Kids, Monster Hunter. And he's also worked on some TV shows such as Supernatural, Cold Case, Criminal Minds, The Shy, The Chi, Barskins, and much more. But Adam has very kindly agreed to come on for an interview and let me annoy him. But Adam, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm just looking at all the awesome art you have behind you. That's pretty cool stuff.
Of course, man. You're like one of the first artists, one of the first people to ever notice it. Like I said, I have some brilliant pieces here by all these fantastic artists. I still have to get a Suicide Squad piece up,
Yeah, me too.
You need a Suicide Squad.
Who
would I add? Which character?
Well, you know what you do? You reach out to Instagram to Federico, who did a lot of Suicide Squad stuff. He's in Spain. He'll send you something for your wall.
It's as easy as that. I'll just use my Irish charm on him, Just force him to do
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so actually, before we get into the good stuff, I can't resist asking a Suicide Squad question. Who's your favorite member? Just get it out of the way on record.
Harley, of course. It's why I wanted her on the squad so bad. When I first brought it up, they were like, no way. And I actually turned around, and at the time, my editor was a guy named Pat McCallum. I said, Pat, I got to be honest, I don't think I write the book unless I have her. I have all these ideas for her, and I just think she's the shot in the arm that the squad needs. And he called up at the time the editor-in-chief of all the Batman sort of franchise, which was a guy named Mike Martz. Oh, yeah. And Mike Martz turned around, and amazing guy, both good guys, by the way. And I remember pitching him why this was so important. He goes, listen, man, it's a long shot. Let me go see what I can do. And Mike went and fought for it with Pat, and they got a yes. And as they say, the rest is history. I'd love to say that I knew that she would be the thing that would just blow it all up. I did not. I just wanted to write her desperately. So it was really just me being totally selfish and being like, I want to write this character and sort of reintroduce her in a different way and all that stuff. Sorry, my daughter was trying to call me. So at the end of the day, that was really the reason behind it, and she became my favorite character. I'd say before she was part of. So sorry, buddy.
Oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about it at all.
Text her. So sorry.
If you'd like, we can take a minute and I'll cut this out, and you can.
Can you cut around this? If not, this is real life.
Yeah, no, you can. I can cut around this. It's up to you. I don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't mind either. It's real life. So at the end of the day, before that, when I was growing up and reading the John Ostrander books,
yes,
obviously I love Deadshot. Deadshot was an amazing character, and always thought Floyd was interesting. And I loved the story about his daughter, and I just thought, he was the Suicide Squad to me. So he was also essential to have him on the squad when it came time to do it. I could not see him. It was interesting because I don't really have Rick Flag in my books, and everybody was like, oh, Rick Flag is such a thing, but I was interested in exploring other things. So to me, I also thought, oh, what if Deadshot was the leader? Because he's not a leader, at least not in the books originally. And then it was just another way to sort of visit him and make his character interesting. So that's a long answer, Daniel. I apologize, my friends.
Absolutely. We need these long answers, I'm so excited here. I could talk about Suicide Squad for all day. So it's nice to have an actual professional writer to talk about it with. And so this was all during the New 52. So how did the Suicide Squad come about to you? Did you get a message from an editor that said, do you want to write the Suicide Squad, or?
So it was crazy. They had not told us. So here's the long and short of it. I had worked for many years with Marvel, and I had a sort of interesting backwards career. Most comic book writers get into television. That's the goal. I was a television writer who'd been reading comic books since I was 4 years old. So I loved comics.
Yeah.
And I just remember, if I could have in my 20s or 30s, I just didn't have the opportunity to write them. And then sort of as I started to get more into TV, I would go to the Comic Cons. I was actually taking my son, who was little at the time, down to see them. And I was at the DC booth. I was talking to a guy from marketing who I had sort of met before. And he said, why aren't you writing for us? And I said, why am I not writing for you? I don't know. I don't know anybody over there. He's like, well, and it was time I was an executive producer on Supernatural. So he's like,
Yes.
oh, everybody loves Supernatural. He's like, so he called over Dan Didio, who was the editor in chief, who also turned out to be a huge Supernatural fan. And we started to talk. And, you know, it was one of those like great conversation. That was July. I did not hear anything for almost 6 months. And then I was actually
Wow.
walking into a comic book store and I got a call, and then he said, Jim Lee and Dan Didio was on the phone.
Wow.
And I thought it was a friend of mine messing around. So I was like, I literally hung up. I was like, right. So I grew up loving Jim Lee. You know what I mean? Jim Lee was a god to me growing up as a kid, his X-Men run, you know, all the stuff with Chris Claremont and, you know, yeah. So, I mean, I was a giant Jim Lee fan. So they called back and they said, yeah, like, why don't you start by doing like a one shot for us? We'd love to do something with you. They knew my work over at Marvel. And I said, great. So I did a Justice League of America one shot. And it was an annual, I think it was annual 80. The amazing thing about it was all the artists I worked with actually were from Spain and Italy. So it was like really interesting to sort of work with these great. Well, the idea was Dante's Inferno, which was also so European. It was sort of perfect, you know, to sort of have the artists that I worked with. So I worked with them. I did it. It was a really good experience. I got to write Batman. I got to like write Plastic Man. I was like, you know, so cool to do a Justice League book and Superman and write all your heroes. And then it was funny because from that, then I got a call. They said, oh, we really liked working with you on the annual. Would you like to do you like what'd they say? Do you like, why am I forgetting it? The Injustice League, the Legion of things.
Legion of Doom?
Legion of Doom. So they're like, do you like Legion of Doom? And I'm like, I love Legion of Doom. And I grew up with Super Friends, you know, the Legion of Doom, you know, yes. It was like in the swamp. I was like, yes, I'm in. I don't even ask any other questions. So they're like, great, can you meet with Jeff Johns like tomorrow? So I like, write up all these ideas and I'm like so excited to go meet Jeff. Well, I knew Jeff when he was an assistant, but I hadn't seen him in years. He was Richard Donner's assistant, you know, when I first met him. So I literally turned around and went in there and I was like, oh my God, I have all these ideas and like, you know, let's use Black Mantra and let's use all like Sinestro. And he goes, no, because this is about Heat Wave. And I'm like, Heat Wave from Flash, from his like Rogues Gallery. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, but he was never in he's like, don't worry. They hadn't told me. So I had to come up with this sort of thing. And that was Flashpoint.
Yes.
So I wrote the thing. So all my career, I had been really blessed and lucky, nothing but reviews and people really just loving what I was doing at Marvel. All of a sudden I wrote Legion of Doom and people literally hated it. So I thought, well, there's the end of my comic book career. Like I remember like reading the review and I thought I wrote the coolest thing in the world, but much like my thing, everyone had the same sort of reaction was Legion of Doom should have Legion of Doom members in it, not Heat Wave. So people really hated the book. And I thought, okay, well, I gave it my try. And thank God I have a day job in TV. And then they called me and said, well, we don't care. We loved what you did with Legion of Doom. We really like working with you. And they said, so, you know, what would there be a series, like a annual series you'd be, you know, interested in? And they sent me a list. And there was some great stuff on the list, but, you know, you sort of got to know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Like I always say, I'm not the guy to write Superman. I love Superman, but I'm not that guy. Like I just know what I write. I'm better with the down and dirty street level sort of characters. Like I'm a Batman guy. I mean, really at the end of the day, like, you know, if you were to ask me like, you know, who do if I had to pick one, it's Batman. Batman's the greatest superhero ever made, in my opinion. So, you know, I turned around and they gave me this list and basically on the list was these great books, but I was like, so I remember calling back and going, are you guys gonna do anything with Suicide Squad? Because I had read Ostrander's book as a kid. I loved it. It was one of my favorite comic books. I loved the movie The Dirty Dozen. I love the idea of taking villains. I love the sort of not the black and white, but the gray of everything. And just, you know, I probably read every one of Ostrander's runs and always was really big fan of it. And they said, oh, well, you know, we're not sure. Well, why? What would you do with Suicide Squad? And I was like, so I basically started just saying, you know, here's John. I can't do what John did. John did such an amazing job. And I also thought, you know, we were in a time politically, John did a lot about politics and thankfully so. I mean, I learned probably more from reading John's books, you know, about politics and world things than I did in history class. So I turned around and said, you know, this book should be more, you know, Dirty Dozen. It should be sort of, sort of more fun, and the humor should be more this, and which is also why Harley was great, and it should be even more Suicide Squad, a suicide mission, and let's just go rough and tough. Like, to me, the one thing that I think is good as that movie, to me, the Suicide Squad is not fighting a big alien or fighting a big thing at the end of the world. Like, they're down and dirty. They're the guys you send in to kidnap Saddam Hussein. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're the guys who may like to just get these terrible, horrible missions. But I understand it's a movie and you got to sort of do something bigger. So it's a long way of saying I said I would be interested in Suicide Squad. And then once I told them what I would do, then that conversation began. At the time, I had no idea. None of us did. They didn't tell us they were going to do a thing called New 52. They just were talking to us individually about books. So I just thought I was going to write a new version of Suicide Squad. I had no clue that it was going to be this whole long, this initiative and all that stuff. That was brand new information to us.
Amazing. And so I really love your lineup. It's probably one of my, I like what you touched on there, like the Suicide Squad, like you really give them this gritty look. And that's probably one of my favorite things about your run is how you don't shy away from the fact that they're villains, which I want to get into soon. But your lineup is really interesting. And it includes recently a character that's been getting a surprising amount of love, the one, the only King Shark. And like your character, you can see the similarities. Like obviously James Gunn took some inspiration. Like he mentioned on Twitter that he took a lot of inspiration from your comic. But do you get to choose the lineup? For your version of Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I did. I got to totally do it. And, and look, a part of me, so again, like I'm building on what came before me. Like I always say, you're standing on the shoulders of greats, so I took a little bit of what John Ostrander was doing. And then the other person was Gail Simone in The Secret Six. She was doing this great run that I loved and I found both funny and smart and entertaining, and everyone I think in the sort of mix or knew anything was like, well, this is Suicide Squad. It might as well be Suicide Squad. I mean, this group feels very much like a Suicide Squad group. And she had King Shark, and I thought she did a great job. And I thought King Shark was really funny in her book. So I was really just building off what Gail had done before me. Then as a kid, like I also was looking at the group and, putting it through the prism of today, which is, we live in a very different world. And I wanted the characters to represent that. So needing different characters, I was looking at it, and I remember a run of El Diablo. It was a mini series at the time. And I remember it had a great cover by Phil Hester, who's an amazing artist.
Amazing.
It was like this with like two guns and the face mask, and he almost looked dead in the thing. And I remember that, just seeing that cover. I'm a cover guy. If I saw a good cover when I was a kid going into a comic book store, who am I kidding? I was buying comics into my 40s. I would turn around and just, I'm a sucker. If it was a good cover, I get it. So I remember buying each of those books, and I remember thinking, oh, it's a shame they didn't do more with this character. So when it was time to do Suicide Squad, it was really great because I was able to sort of turn around and rethink the origin a little before, and that character I was able to use, again, familiar but sort of a fresh take on their stuff. And I really liked El Diablo a lot. And then Black Spider was literally the first Batman comic book I ever read as a kid. He fought Black Spider.
Wow.
And the cover was great. I can't remember that. Like, I'm not one of those guys, nerds. I'm a nerd in my own way, but I can't remember numbers. Like some people are like Detective Comic 523. I can't do that. But it was Batman swinging and Black Spider swinging and sort of colliding over Gotham City. And it was a great, great cover. And so I always remember that. So Black Spider's always had a special place in my heart as a character. And then just really being able to actually go in and rethink a lot of that character. So, that was the fun thing for me. How could I take these characters and sort of bring them into the modern world?
Yeah, and I think you did a brilliant job there. And you just brought up Black Spider. Your inclusion of Black Spider was amazing. He's just been a character that I've always loved. And I think whenever he's in the Suicide Squad, he really gets to shine. But like what I really like as how in your run, obviously they're all bad people, but there's kind of different levels of bad. Like, I mean, you could kind of say that Black Spider maybe wasn't as bad as maybe another character until we kind of see later on. But so did you know from the very start that you wanted to write these guys as villains, or did you want to write them as reluctant heroes, or?
I think it's a little of everything, right? I said earlier, it's like, so many things are not black and white, they're gray. I have, people in my own family who have, unfortunately made some bad decisions and been in prison. And I just don't necessarily think they're bad people. I think they just made bad decisions. And then there are bad people who are villains, right? There are people who are just straight up villains. It's really interesting about Harley. I mean, Harley's crazy. I mean, Harley's really sick, but yet at the same time, incredibly brilliant, but she's a psychopath, Anybody who ends up with the Joker and all that stuff. But for me, with her especially, I also wanted to show how smart she was, because you could be both, right? You could be a psychopath, but also be, in fact, most psychopaths are geniuses, like they're really like, to turn around. If you look at the history of like even serial killers, most of them high IQs, but to turn around and sort of just show that, yeah, everything wasn't so black and white. Some things are just gray, and I just did a spy series for Netflix that I created called In From the Cold. And I spoke to a lot of spies, and they had a couple of same things. It didn't matter if they were from Russia or from America, they said the same things. Basically, nobody thinks they're bad. Everyone thinks what they're doing is for the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think these people are doing what they can. Again, King Shark is pure instinct. He's what's interesting about his character is we never got to it. Was one of the things I was trying to do is and it was just so many people to do, was that basically at the end of the day, he's much smarter, but that Amanda Waller was sort of drugging him and keeping him sort of dumb, so that she can control him. And we just never had time to get to that storyline.
Oh man.
I wanted to, I just thought this idea of like, again, because Waller, now here's a funny thing, Waller's in charge. One could argue Waller's the baddest villain of them all, because he was willing to do anything, but she does it for country. So she believes what she's doing is right and good. So again, that's the interesting thing about what's good and what's bad and who's right and who's wrong. It's a really gray area.
Yeah, and so is that fun for you to get to play with that concept of, good versus evil and right or wrong, So is that fun concept for you to get to play with?
100%. At the end of the day, it's why I say I can't write Superman. It's like I think I could write anything. Like you could now, could I write a version of Superman? Yes. Is it where my strength would lie? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? It's like I like working more in the sort of street level characters and dealing with characters that are more gray and dirty. It's like, look, Batman too. There's if you really think about Batman, you put it through the prism of like a modern day sort of like what's normal, what's not. He's insane. He has dedicated his life to revenge his parents, where what he needed was some therapy. You know what I'm saying? Like he needs some therapy. Not only that, he's turned around. He's not only dedicated his life, he dresses up in a costume. He goes out, he beats up people. He's fighting a war he'll never win. And he brings a underage, sidekick in who could get killed to sort of help him pursue this, to also help them with their revenge. So, if there's somebody who should be in Arkham Asylum, it's Batman, but he's the greatest hero of all time. I mean, what an amazing character. And what makes him amazing is all those things, that none of it makes sense. That it's all like, it's crazy, yet we all understand it because we all, something happened to our parents. We want to believe we would do everything and anything to revenge that. You know what I'm saying? So it goes down to our most basic instinct. So yeah, it's a long way of saying, yes, I love all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And all right, so you obviously got to create quite a few original characters, such as Voltaic and Yo-Yo. And my favorite joke in the whole series is how, I guess mild spoilers if you haven't read the series, you can skip over this part. But at one point, King Shark eats Yo-Yo, and a couple of issues later, maybe like he just like King Shark ends up regurgitating Yo-Yo, and it was revealed he was alive this whole time. That was probably one of the funniest things I've ever read. So how did that whole concept come about?
Yeah, again, by the way, James Gunn, if you're watching, can you please use one of my characters? But you used like 50 characters and not one of my originals,
You have to get that Yo-Yo film.
Get Yo-Yo in there. Come on. What about Yo-Yo?
We need Yo-Yo.
I got to be honest, Yo-Yo to me was, I remember reading, oh my God, I'm trying to remember the name of the book now. And it's terrible because I know the author. But, I remember there was a sort of thing where Batman turns around and Brad, what's Brad's last name? Oh, it's slipping me. But where he had turned around and Batman, his files got out and he had a plan to just how to take down every member of the Justice League.
Brad Meltzer, was it?
Yes. Brad Meltzer's book. And thank you. And I remember what really stuck with me was that he said the most powerful of all of them, the one that he didn't know how to defeat, the one who, if he only realized how amazing it was, is probably the greatest hero of them all in the sense of like strength and indestructibility was Plastic Man, which I remember blew my mind. Like I remember thinking to myself, because Plastic Man always jokes around and such a jokester and all that. So I love that idea. So, in some ways with Yo-Yo, it was like sort of applying that instead of like, he can't stretch like him, but, be able to use his body mass and change it and do all these things had some similarities. But I love this idea that actually he was indestructible. And so, when the idea, I remember pitching that to Pat McCallum, my editor, and I said, he eats them. And he's like, and I said, but a few issues later, he'll come out. And he said, oh my God, that's amazing. And by the way it's drawn, the art of it's so great. I love it. I love him, the way we do it. And he crawls out of his mouth and like falls out and you realize he's been, and then he's upset. He's like, didn't anyone look for anybody wonder where I was? Like, he's like, he ate me, man. I was literally in his stomach and it's like, no one cares. Everybody's like, okay, move on. Let's go. You survived and all this stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I love that. And let's hope in 3, they bring Yo-Yo in and they do that. Cause I think it's a fun, interesting sort of thing to do for a movie too.
Absolutely, we need that sweet Yo-Yo. I mean, it's not much if we ask for a film trilogy. I assume that's how Hollywood works. Just ask for it, and it'll just appear on a silver platter. But yeah, exactly. Absolutely, get that trending, get that Yo-Yo new mini series or something like that. But yeah, no. So what I really liked about your run is you included some great characters. So was there a character that you didn't expect that you'd like writing for so much? Like a character you came in and you're like, oh wow, because I know a lot of writers, Suicide Squad writers especially, they have this weird fascination with Captain Boomerang because he's just such a fun character to write for. So was there any character in particular that you didn't expect to love writing for so much? But you ended up.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Boomerang because like originally I didn't have him in the book, and I know he's so much part of Suicide Squad, and that was DC going, you got to get him back in the book. And yeah, when I started writing him, he was a lot of fun. But like I was was interesting. I didn't want to do like Crocodile Dundee. I was trying to sort of figure out a way to do the character and make him. I got to be honest with you. I think they nailed it in the Suicide Squad movies. Like, I think he's like when I saw that, I was like, I should have wrote him like that. Like, it's like, I like the way they changed his style. I like the way they sort of, they made him a little more hardcore. The one thing we don't really have a say in, especially if it's a character that's already developed, is their costumes. Like, I remember when everything came out with the Harley Quinn stuff, everybody freaked out that she was out of her Jester's outfit and they put her in this more Arkham Asylum thing. And it was like, everyone attacked me. And I was like, guys, please call Jim Lee. Like, what am I supposed to do? Hey, Jim, I don't think this costume, Jim Lee doesn't, it's like, Jim Lee's a legend. He drew that. He thought that was the way to go with it. I'm not going to sit there and go against Jim Lee. And look, he was right over time because nobody thinks about the costume anymore. But, at the end of the day, like, we don't really have to say. So my point is, like, I always thought Captain Boomerang's outfit was ridiculous. So it was part of the reason I didn't want to write him. But then when I saw him in the movie, I was like, oh man, I wish I thought of that. That's so much a cooler version of him. But I did enjoy writing him much more than I thought. And then there are people who I always knew I loved writing Amanda Waller. But again, that was another thing. Like, they made Amanda Waller skinnier that she'd been in the books, not the Wall as she's known, though I think the Wall is more of an attitude than a physical presence. And I got so much stuff for that. And it was, again, like, guys, you think I called them up and I'm like, oh, I have an idea. Let's make Amanda Waller skinny. Like, no, like, people don't understand the writer doesn't have a say in that stuff. You have say in the new characters you create. Yeah. So I had say, obviously, in Yo-Yo's costume, or Voltaic's costume, or in the Teen Titans, some of the new characters I create, I had say in their costumes. But if it's a character that already exists, they're not asking the writer what you think.
Yeah. And like, I can absolutely see that there. I think you did an amazing job with the characters you were given. And I especially loved how you wrote for El Diablo. I thought it was a really interesting character. And you can kind of see, definitely in like David Ayer's version, you really get to see, like, he obviously took a lot of inspiration from the comic, especially with El Diablo. But El Diablo was such an interesting character to me because he's done bad things, but he kind of searches for that concept of redemption. So was El Diablo fun for you to write?
100%. I think El Diablo is like a Western, right? When I thought of him, it's originally the character was based off of a character that rode the horse in a mask. When I was growing up, El Diablo was sort of like more of a Western character, but his redemption also is like, it's such a classic prison sort of thing. It's like he went into prison, he found God, in his redemption. And so I love this idea of this character who did horrible things and sort of grow street, but then finds God, and then he's trying to sort of redeem himself through God, and yet he's now pulled into the Suicide Squad, which is asking him to go against everything he's been trying to do to fix himself. And one could argue being a criminal, being a villain is like a drug, right? So it's like, once you get around it, do you just sort of allow it to take you over and become that thing? So he was another one who was like struggling between his redemption and trying to be a better person, and then this thing that actually would free him. This idea that you get time off for these missions, and that, you could sort of eventually get free if you survive enough of them. So I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, I really liked writing El Diablo. I'm trying to remember, was it Charto?
Oh, Chato, I think.
Yes, is his name. But yeah, I remember writing him. I remember actually his origin story I changed a little bit, but he accidentally burned down this house, and there were kids in there, and he didn't know. And like I remember just writing that and almost crying while I was writing it, because I just could see his pain. Like, that's the moment that he realizes he's crossed the line, and that innocent children have died and he didn't know, and he just feels horrible about it. I think that's what changes him at that moment. You know what I'm saying? I think he knows from there out that he has to sort of march to a different path. But Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad are going to challenge all that. So yeah, super fascinating character to write.
Yeah, and I loved how you did such an amazing job exploring all these characters. And like, the thing that's kind of tough is, how do you make these villains who do bad things likable? So is that kind of hard for you? Because you can't have someone like, I don't know, Deadshot just shoot random innocent civilian and then be like, oh, look how amazing I am. So is it tough for you to kind of, or was that your goal, to try and make these characters likable? Or were you happy writing them just as straight up villains?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. Like, I think there are people who deserve that sort of redemption, and then I think there's those people who are just pure bad guys. I mean, when Deadshot's doing it because he wants to save his daughter, and he wants to get his daughter back. I give some of those things. Like, I always say, look at TV shows, and you're a little young, so I don't think you probably watched Breaking Bad. But Breaking Bad is a show about a guy who gets into drugs, but it's really not. It's a family show. The Sopranos is not about the mob, it's about family. It's like all these shows are really about family. In some way, the Suicide Squad's about the family you make, when you're in that thing. So, for me, it was all those things. It was being able to sort of show all the different shades of people, and sort of how, sometimes that can reflect good, bad. We all have good and bad in us. It's just the question of what's going to win, and where's our soul, and what, which way do we want to live our lives? Almost anybody.
Sorry, Adam, can you hear me? I think you just cut out a little bit. I don't think your connection is best right now. Sorry, just want to be a minute. Can you hear me, Adam?
I can hear you. You can't
Perfect,
hear me?
perfect. You're back now. Yeah, sorry, it was just a little cut out there. But yeah, very, very happy to have you back. But yeah, no. So of course, the Suicide Squad. I believe there's a trade paperback. People can get that from maybe their local comic book store.
Yeah, Kicked in the Teeth #1 is a trade paperback, and is actually right now, I think, #6 on the Amazon bestseller list. So every time the movies come out, it always comes back up. It was a New York Times bestseller a few times, which I'm really proud of. And yeah, and thank you, Daniel, for talking about the character work. I think my book sort of, people think of the action, they don't think of the character stuff that I was trying to do. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
No, that was absolutely like one of the main things. Like I said, there's never been a bad Suicide Squad comic, because every writer, like, there's so many different things, like, that's very hard to get wrong, and you really, like, you can explore all these different aspects. And for me, like my dad read this when it was ongoing in 2012, and so after watching the new Suicide Squad film, like in 2016, I was like, okay, do you have any like Suicide Squad comics? My dad was like, yeah. So he busted out, and we had all, of course, the floppies. And after reading it, it was weird. Like, you think I wasn't so like interested in action, but I thought the characters, because I never really saw villains been portrayed as people. I just saw like villains go blow stuff up, and that's what they do. There's no real reason behind it. But then when I read your one, I could see that there were like these characters, there's more to them. And I think that really, like, that shaped my love for comic books. So I've kind of waited for this interview for 4 years. So thank you so much again for coming on.
They reached out sooner.
Of course, yeah, I did. I didn't know if there was any way to reach out to you. So when you replied, I was like, oh man, he said yes. What do I do from here? But yeah, so was there any character who was actually surprisingly hard for you to write, or hard to get a grasp on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Not really. I thought it's funny because I always joke that I prefer one character, but I end up doing these team books, and I end up writing all these characters, which I guess I do well. And I guess my TV experience has sort of helped me with, because you have multiple characters on a TV show, so you could write everybody. Yeah, there was nobody. I'm sure I'll get a million people who will hate what I'm about to say, but it's like, it's why I kept Rick Flag out. I wasn't interested in writing him.
Yeah.
You know, I will say the thing that upset me, you know, again, it's like it's the business of comic books. I remember I sort of pitched this whole arc. I was trying to get to book 24, and I think I got to book 20. I had 4 books left to sort of finish my arc, and I was like, I came in and I was like, unknown soldier, let's put him in, like, you know, like as the new leader, and then I sort of thinking all this stuff, and then you know, there's no other way to say it. It's like, it's just the way the comic book business works. You know, I had this plan, and then they changed the plan, and they brought in a different writer, and then he got to write, you know, the Unknown Soldier. And I was like, wait, I have 4 books left. Like, that was the deal. What happened? You know, it wasn't personal, it was business. They just had to make some changes, and that's what happens. But yeah, so I was upset that I didn't get to write the Unknown Soldier because of the character I was want to write. I wrote 1 panel where he shows up at the end, and that was it. So, you know, that's the other thing. You're trying to get people, like, you know, that's the great thing about something like Suicide Squad. You could sort of go, oh, I want to write Catman. You know, it's like, you know, I didn't want to write Catman, but I'm just using an example as like, but you can sort of get to full characters into your book that you're like, oh, I want to try, I want to work with, and I've never had a chance to sort of to do that with. So Unknown Soldier was one of them, and then I didn't even get a chance to do it. I think what was his name, Alec Cox.
Alice Cott.
Yeah, I think so. He got to write that character, and I know he did a really good job. People were really happy with his book, so I was really happy for him.
Yeah, and it was of course going to be revealed that the Unknown Soldier was Yo-Yo this whole time. Has to be. DC, call me. You know, I'm right here. If I can come up with an idea like that,
look at this guy. Why have you hired him yet?
Yeah, you know,
I think it's because you have too much Marvel stuff behind you. That's why.
Oh no, this is these are all DC characters. You know, it's it's public domain. Sure, why not? But yeah, no. So were you going to reveal who the Unknown Soldier was, or do you have a specific character in your mind you were going to reveal it to be?
I did not at the time. So, you know, and to be honest with you, I stopped reading the book after I wrote it, so I have no idea what happened. So
it was revealed to be Yo-Yo. Did you miss that part?
Yeah, apparently I missed it.
Yeah, but yeah, so another thing I want to touch on is that, all right, so the new Suicide Squad film, so much hype around it. I got into the cinema to watch it. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do because it's 16s. So I wore jeans, I put socks in my shoes, which made me look like an extra inch or 2 taller. And in the end, he just let me in. He didn't really care. But getting to watch it was so amazing. And at the end, I was looking at the credits, and I saw your name on it. I was like, oh, I'm going to interview him soon, you know, and that was a bit of a surreal feeling. But so what was it like to get to see your name in the credits of the Suicide Squad?
Oh no, look, really cool. Again, like in great company. There's so many people, and some of them are friends that I see their names on there. I'm so happy. And some of them are the people I grew up really admiring. So just so happy for so many people to turn around and get to see it. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of, you know, living in Los Angeles, and I, you know, going to a few of the premieres and meeting people. And I've had the pleasure to meet John Ostrander, who, like I said, again, was such a hero of mine.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to meet, you know, Paul Dini, you know, and his wonderful wife, Misty, a few times, and they're always so kind to me and my son, you know, it's just been great. And, you know, also for my son to come along on this ride with me. He's 17 now, but he was a little boy when this whole thing started. So he would come to cons with me and meet people, and everybody was always so lovely to him, which I, you know, can't be more than thankful for. You know, he's been to the premieres with me, all that stuff. So, you know, to sort of get to do this with him and have that experience with him and him grow up around this is really cool. In fact, you know, he's always been very helpful in me creating character. He's going to kill me because I can't remember now. So got to remember, I wrote this book over 10 years ago. So he had a character that he came up with that we put in the book who could freeze things. He could touch, and he was on my run, and I can't remember what name we gave him, but he turned around and, you know, my son helped me create that. Just like, by the way, in Teen Titans, he helped me create Roundhouse. So
wow, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, always, you know, he'd always come in with pitches and ideas. Dad, what about this person? What about that person? And all that stuff. So it was always, you know, and what if this was their power? And, you know, so that was always cool.
Yeah. And so getting to watch the recent film, was there one character that if you could add to your run from the recent film, like you looked, I'm not sure, have you seen the recent Suicide Squad film?
I did. I thought it was amazing. I thought James Gunn did such an amazing job. But, you know, I thought David Ayer got a real, you know, kick in the teeth that he didn't deserve. I thought he did a really good job too. I just think it, you know, critics can be really tough on certain people, and it's funny how they'll grab someone as a, you know, and sit there like a James Gunn and say, oh my God, everything he touches is amazing. I do agree that he does amazing work, but I also think David Ayer deserves a lot more credit than he gets. And, you know, it wasn't fully his cut, and Warner Brothers had, so I'm with a lot of people. I'd love to see the cut, you know, and see what it looks like. It'd be really fascinating seeing that. But
Maybe
watching
Yo-Yo's in it.
maybe Yo-Yo's in it. Exactly. They cut out Yo-Yo. Where's my check? That's what I want. Where's my check? College is expensive. I got to pay for these kids. At the end of the day, who did I see? I got to be honest with you. I thought Bloodsport was really good. Like, like I thought, what a great cat, right? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Bloodsport. Well, plus you have one of the greatest actors maybe of our generation playing.
Yeah, Idris Elba. Ooh.
That does not hurt, but I thought his character was great. And look, some similarities to Deadshot with the kid and all that stuff. But I loved that him and John Cena had the same power, though. I love that the two of them were on the thing, and Peacemaker and him and all that stuff. That was great. So yeah, those characters were a lot of fun. By the way, Polka Dot Man was fun. There's so many characters that were so much fun, and also I could see why James picked those characters, because they sort of fit into his sense of humor.
Yeah.
Which is really funny is like, and again, people have their opinions. Like, I think not only putting Harley into the book, but I think really bringing a strong sense of humor to it was something else that I tried to do with my book that I think carried into the movies. Because, and I learned that from Supernatural, when things are so dark and bad, you got to sort of find, that gallow humor, to sort of, balance it out with. And I tried to bring that. And I was in the middle of working on Supernatural when I started writing Suicide Squad. So I think a lot of that Supernatural stuff, for me, at least the writing and the humor, was carrying into that book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I know that David Ayer didn't exactly get his vision out there, but nonetheless, I still really enjoyed the film. Like, I think it's just so steeped in nostalgia now, because I watched that trailer like a million times, and just getting to go watch it and then coming back and I'd pretend I was like Captain Boomerang chasing my friends around. So it's just stuff like that. But yeah, I still really I guess that film's just covered in nostalgia for me. But I still really enjoyed it, and I do hope we get David Ayer's cut, because it sounds amazing. And I think we should just let directors do whatever they want, for stuff like that. But yeah, so another thing I want to touch on, because you've obviously done so much, but this question I ask all my Suicide Squad team guests: if you could see the Suicide Squad go up against any other comic book team, who would it be?
Oh, if they could fight anybody?
Yes.
Well, I know they're doing the thing with the Justice League now, which I think is somewhat interesting. But what's crazy is to me, they should be fighting the Wrecking Crew from Marvel, or some other group, well, what's the Marvel version of the Suicide Squad is
Thunderbolts?
Yes, the Thunderbolts. That's the thing you want to see. You want to see them go up against a match that's like that of their own. To me, that would be really interesting book to turn around and do, is have the crossover. No one, when I was growing up, they did crossovers. I wish they'd still do them, because I think they'd be a lot of fun. Thunderbolts meet, versus Suicide Squad would be awesome.
Yeah, but if the Suicide Squad had Yo-Yo, there's no point in doing it, because we all know how it's going to end.
Listen, all I have to say is, you and me, buddy, let's start a Yo-Yo campaign, and let's get Yo-Yo in the next Suicide Squad movie.
Let's do it. Release the Yo-Yo cut. Get it trending, everyone on Twitter. I have such big influence on this YouTube channel, so I imagine that I've automatically James Gunn is just going to wake up to a million emails saying, "Get Yo-Yo in the film." Get
Yo-Yo. That Irish kid is saying something from Dublin. We got to listen.
Of course, I talk about comic books, so how cooler can I get? So come on, make that film. But yeah, so I also want to touch on, you just brought it up there, the Teen Titans. Of course, it was an amazing run here. Teen Titans, you got to do some brilliant stuff. But how did the Teen Titans come about? Was this after Suicide Squad?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Go back to, it's totally years after Suicide Squad. I actually decided after Suicide Squad, I decided to sort of walk away and just turn around, and, obviously focus not just on my TV, but also just doing some independent books.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to create our own stuff. So I came up with, the Normals and the Rough Riders and the Lollipop Kids. And I started sort of writing mostly for the next 5 years, I think, after that. And I honestly did not think I would do another book. But Pat McCallum, again, who was my editor, who had been promoted, he was my editor on Suicide Squad. He had been promoted up the ladder and sort of was just in charge of all the editing and editorial. And he called me and said, I know because if anyone asked me, Marv Wolfman's run and George Perez's run on Teen Titans when I was a kid, especially Judas Contract's probably my favorite book of all time. So I was perfect timing for that book while I was growing up, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of all time. So he called knowing the only way to pull me back in was to offer me the dream of my childhood. So he did. And I got to be honest with you, I was at the time I was working in Chicago. I was in the South Side shooting a show called The Shy. And they called me and I was like, at first I was like, do I really want to jump back? It's a lot of work to do an annual book. I mean, do a book, a monthly book. And I already had a full-time job and my kids were still growing up. And I always am very, because I'm writing a comic book. So I was trying to sort of just balance it all out. And it was crazy because I was driving in one day and a graffiti artist had done this unbelievable thing, literally in the middle of like an abandoned building. There was a huge Batman that he had drawn. And I took it as a sign. I was like, wow, like that's crazy that I got that. So when I called and I spoke to them, I said, I'll do it on a couple of conditions. One is I get to create a bunch of new characters. I'm going to do like my best version of what Marv Wolfman and George Perez did, which is take some older characters, but let's also create some new characters that can be for a new generation, which is what I felt like they did with Raven and Cyborg, you know, back in the day when I started reading in Garth, you know, even though he was an old character that they sort of reinvented Beast Boy. I want to do the similar thing. And so they said yes. And I said, and it's 2 years and I get to do a full 24 books and I get to see it through, because a lot of times what happens is you're doing your arc of your character stuff that you want to do. And then they'll come into you and say, hey, we have a crossover with this and that. And we need you to really go with Resurrection Man. And you're like, but I have this plot and a story that I sort of been planning. So it's hard because you're part of the bigger universe.
Yeah.
And I don't mind doing that as long as I kept feeling like I was shortchanging the audience. And then the audience, of course, would get mad at me. They'd be like, oh, that plot got dropped. And it's like, it wasn't my fault the plot got dropped. You know, it was like it got dropped because I had to service a bigger thing. So they agreed to those things very kindly. And then I started creating characters. And it was funny because originally I wanted Mary Marvel. To me, I wanted to reinvent her like I did her. Well, you know, again, take the familiar sort of thing that I did with Harley and sort of give a fresh take on it. To me, she was going to be my new Harley. And I had all these ideas how to take Mary Marvel and sort of bring her into the new world. And I love that she was a Shazam character, but I feel like she's never really, no one's ever taken the time. She's a clean slate. You could really do anything with Mary Marvel. And then they were like, no, you can't touch her. And I was like, and then I thought it was a Harley thing. And I kept fighting. And finally, they're like, no. And I was like, we need our Harley for the team. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in Diddy's office. And he's like, well, who else would you know, and they had already, by the way, agreed to Roundhouse and they had already agreed to Jin. And, you know, to me, again, Jin was filling the role of Raven, a magical character that we could sort of bring into this thing. And then the other character was Roundhouse, which again was like, to me, like Beast Boy, like Garth was this funny character that could have a lot of sense of humor. And I just knew we still needed our big, strong Starfire. Sorry, that's the character. You know, like who's our Starfire? Who's our Harley Quinn? And I said, you know, I always thought, you know, what it, I know, and I knew the history. I was like, what if, I said this to Dan Didio, who's the editor, president of DC. I said, what if Lobo had a daughter? I didn't even finish. I was like, Lobo had a daughter. And he's like, yes. Like, what's her name? And I said, you know, it's interesting. I don't know why I always had this idea of crush, just like crushing stuff. He's like, yep, that's it. Like, I mean, literally it was like, he knew it right away. He like got on the phone, he called, he's like, we got it. He started having some art drawn. He loved the idea that now anybody who knows anything about Lobo was he killed all his children.
Yeah.
So like, you know, when I first came out, of course, you know, you have all the hardcore fans going, you know, Adam Glass doesn't know anything about it. It's like, of course I know that, guys. And there's a plan for it. She was hidden and he didn't know she existed, you know, because anybody who knew anything knew he would kill her. So what if her parents were, you know, she was hidden and she was set, like, I never even got as far as I wanted to. We only got a little bit into her origin because I had a whole plan for it and sort of why he never knew about her and how the mother had hid her. And then, you know, where you hide people, you hide them in the wide open, you hide them, you know, where, you know, so she was sort of raised by these people. I kept saying, what if Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent were crazy hippies, you know, and she was sort of raised in more like that, which is a little more my childhood. So, you know, I was sort of giving her my own childhood. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And she's a great character. And it's interesting because you never know when you write something like will they last the test of time, you know, and things will still be seen, but I still see Crush and Roundhouse showing up in books, and Crush got her own miniseries.
Yes.
And I'm really proud of, and Roundhouse is, you know, part of Teen Titans Academy. And so I'm so glad to see them both living on. And I don't know where Jin is. I think she's, I keep saying it's like Kung Fu. She's walking the world with Joaquin Thunder, and maybe she'll come back someday because I love her as a character too. But yeah, it's crazy. It's like having kids and putting them out in the world, and then you see sort of who they become, so that's the fascinating thing about it.
Yeah, and so you just touched on there, like, I mean, I've been loving Teen Titans Academy, and then getting to see Roundhouse pop in, it's like, oh yeah, I know, it's like seeing an old friend back there. But was it like to get to see your characters live on, of course? And I just saw the Crush and Lobo miniseries in stores the other day. It's also like you get to see your characters still living on. Is that a bit surreal for you?
Yeah, it is for sure. I mean, listen, it's small taste, when you turn around and you look at some of the people you really admire, like, Rob has Deadpool. I mean, that must just be surreal for him, something he created it when he was 20 years old, that becomes this giant, sort of Rob Liefeld, I have a great quick Rob Liefeld story. I'll never forget. My son and I were standing in line to have him sign a Deadpool book, and I had done Deadpool pulp. And you never know. And I'd done Deadpool. I'd done a bunch of Deadpools. I did Deadpool Suicide Kings with Mike Benson, and we're standing in line. And all of a sudden, and my son must have been 9-10 years old. It was a huge line. And Rob Liefeld goes like this. I've never met Rob Liefeld before. He goes like this, and he's like, hey, everybody. He goes, Adam Glass, who wrote Deadpool, this. He knew every book I wrote of Deadpool. He said, do you mind if him and his son come up here and get a quick order? Now, mind you, I always was like, I'll just stand in line. I don't want to bring attention to myself, but it was so nice of him to do. And we went up and he took pictures with my son, and he signed the book, and he's like, I loved your run on Deadpool pulp. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, you never know, like, does somebody read your stuff and what did they think of it? So that the creator of Deadpool thought that I did a great job and liked it. That was like one of the nice things that ever happened to me in comics. So it's a long way of saying I have not created those kind of iconic characters, but yeah, I could only imagine, having gotten to know Marv Wolfman and that Cyborg's everywhere. I'm so happy for him, that he's in the Justice League and he's all that. Like, wow, you ask your heroes the same things, which is like, we're just like, they say the same things. Like, it's surreal. He created Deathstroke. It's like, he's like
one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. I love Slade Wilson. And how do you not, like, you walk and you see these people dressed in costumes that you created. Like, I only saw a couple of cosplayers for Crush, and I was just so blown away. It's like, oh my God, what a cool thing. And you just hope it keeps growing, and that, one day my grandkids can pick up my comic book and say, hey, my grandfather created this. It's like, that'd be cool.
I can't believe my grandfather created the most famous comic book character of all time, Yo-Yo. Like, I can't believe he's on billboards now. What? This is crazy.
Can I tell you something? Yo-Yo's coming back, and we're gonna make him a huge character. Yo-Yo, I don't understand. You and we're the only two who have the Yo-Yo love.
There's people out there somewhere, for every corner you see, there's someone who adores Yo-Yo. But like, before we move on to, I want to touch on Deadpool as well, but Teen Titans, you seem to write a lot of team books, so I imagine it's harder for you to write for a team book, because if you like, just here, like, if you write a full comic, you could look at the script and say, oh no, I forgot to write something about Red Arrow or Kid Flash. So do you try and make sure that you fit in everyone, and is it kind of harder as opposed to writing a singular character?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see behind me, there's cue cards up for like my stories that I do, and I put and a drum set. So a lot of times what I'll do is, when I'm planning a book, I'll put up and I'll be like, here are the beats for the characters that I want to sort of get in the book, so that each person's touched upon. But it's funny, when I did the Teen Titans annual, I decided to do one character each, like 3 short stories, but just have each character have their own story. It was so fun to write, because as I said, I would love nothing more than just to write an individual story, but it just seems like I've always gotten the team books, and it's really just a balancing act. It's like, how do you tell the story? And again, my TV background really helps with this. How do you tell this like really awesome story about sort of, the overall arc? I always talk about this. I remember we were in the Supernatural room, and I can't remember what season it's 6 or 7. It was like, we're going to close the gates of hell. We had no idea what that meant, but that was our overall arc for the season. And while that's going on, we would then find these little character stories and little pieces and little sort of monster of the week stories to tell. So I sort of do a very similar thing as we do in TV, which is I have a big overall arc, but then I know which characters I want to hit the stories. Then some characters are going to take up, more air. Robin, who, Damian Wayne, who I loved writing, who, unfortunately, I think, not unfortunately, Tomasi did such a great job. And I think so many people love what he did with that character, that when you do anything else against the character, sort of like, and him becoming a good person, they get all over you. So people are like, you ruined him. I'm like, I did not ruin him. I am sort of playing into his character. And what is this? This is just one arc of his character. He's a young guy, but when he started his own prison and he started to sort of lock people up, it's such a Damian Wayne thing to do. And I think it was polarizing. I think some people loved it and some people just were so angry at it because they felt like it was making Damian a villain again.
Yeah,
but this gets back to what we talked about with Suicide Squad, though, buddy. Like, same here. There's a lot of gray in being a hero.
Yeah, and there wasn't enough Yo-Yo. So if any story of yours get criticism, it's just because Yo-Yo's not in it,
Well, it's funny. I was going to do Yo-Yo Jr. in the Teen Titans, but it didn't go. I don't know why. I literally tried. It's like,
man, I can't.
Little Yo-Yo. That's what I would call him. Lil, but like little Dicky, little Yo-Yo.
We can't believe we got robbed of that. Shocking.
Exactly.
But so did you try and write them as like teenagers? Because I think you did a brilliant job. Like I look at Suicide Squad and I look at Teen Titans. Like, how is this written by the same person? Because you really nailed that, like that teen. Because I can actually hear teenagers saying that. Like it's not like oh hey, what's up, man? Like it's like you actually have a really great understanding of those characters. And like if I look Suicide Squad, like Deadshot can kill someone and like they deliver this really epic one-liner, but then I look at this and it's actually teenagers talking. So it's a tough you kind of try and nail that teenager aspect of them.
Well, two things. My wife would say I never grew up, so I'm forever a teenager in my heart. But the second part of it is I had two teenagers in my house while I was writing it. So,
wow.
A lot of these conversations and a lot of these things that were happening in relationship stuff was stuff that I saw. I think you can't help as a writer be influenced by those things, and sort of put it into your work. So that's really where that was all stemming from.
Yeah.
So it's again, had teenagers in the house and I just, so I was sort of living it. I was listening to them and his friends talk and all these things and try to sort of put that in there. And then, you can't help but mix it with your own experiences too. Like just even me as a kid, like I think I put a lot of myself in a Roundhouse, like that was a character that I thought, he's a smart ass, but yet he's really smart. And then, it was really helpful was Bernard Chang, who's an amazing artist and
brilliant.
Like just an unbelievable human being. And he turned around and, I went to him because the character's Chinese and I'm not Chinese. So I would ask Bernard constantly to help me with because I really wanted him to be authentic and sort of feel so like we came up with Mama Wu, his mom, and just them cooking. Like there's a great thing where he brings Kid Flash over and they turn around and have dinner at his house and his mom serves all because Bernard would say his mom would serve like unbelievable 5-6 course meals for his friends. Everybody just wanted burger and fries, and yet she's cooking all this stuff. So all that stuff is really authentic and real, and it's because of Bernard. So he really helped me round out. He should get more credit because Roundhouse, is just as much his character as is mine.
Yeah, and Bernard is amazing, such an unreal artist. You've got to work with some brilliant artists, like not only Bernard on Suicide Squad, but you also got to work on Federico Dallaloci. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, on Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
But just all these amazing artists. So what's it like seeing something that you've written on page? Is that a bit surreal for you?
Yeah, I remember when you get the art things, and I always say it's like Christmas morning because it's like you get these arts and you're like, oh my God, and most of the time it's better than you ever could have imagined when you wrote it, And there were things I always try to do this because I want to let the artist do what they do. So there are things I really know that I want. And then I would say, Paige, is all you, bro. You go do your thing, because I knew I wanted to balance it out so that they had chance to be artistically thing. But then there were things from a story I need to see the hand here, or I need this, because it's important to the story. But if there was a cover page of an action scene that was I'd be just go and always deliver it back 10 times better. I mean, the artists are the true artists of comic books. They're just amazing. I mean, what they can do is just unbelievable. They bring these things to life and put breath into it and all that stuff. I got nothing but mad respect for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think artists are just brilliant. They're the backbone of comics. But another comic I want to touch on that you worked on, you just brought it up there, Deadpool. What was it like to get to work on everyone's favorite Merc Mao?
Well, it's funny. What I wrote him was really before I shouldn't say before, it was right in the middle of the explosion of him becoming this gigantic thing. And we wrote a bunch of Deadpool, and in fact I got to a point where it's I got to get out of the Deadpool world, because I was you start writing it so much and it's he's everything. He's your teenage self, he's your he's your funny, smart. I'm from New York, so I'm a smart aleck, so it was so fun about him. And then the sort of 3 voices in his head and all that stuff. I mean, it was so much fun writing him. But you can very quickly find yourself just like, I think, for a year and a half, like 18 months, I was writing him, and I was just writing him. That's what's interesting about Deadpool Pulp. Everybody was, and again, I think one of those books that, some people really love, and Jai Lee did the covers that are unbelievable, man. They're everyone's a piece of
brilliant artist.
But I wanted to sort of just tell the straight Deadpool story and make the sense of humor sort of less. And it's really just because I wanted to sort of, you're seeing it now with What If. Like, to me, Deadpool Pulp was like it was like a what if world, like what if, Deadpool came out in the 50s during communism and was a product of sort of military sort of everything like that. So it was much different story. It was more him like spy in a Cold War world. And I loved writing that book. But at the end of the day, I think people without it, and there was some of the sense of humor in it, but not as much as I think people wanted. I think people like only see Deadpool if he's funny constantly. And by the way, I used to write sitcoms, and same reason I got out of sitcoms, I was just sick of writing dumb jokes after a while. Like, I just got to a point where I was like, I don't want to write any more jokes. Like, I just like everything like that. I just want to think about the character, not think about jokes. And with Deadpool, you always have to think about the humor and the jokes. So the things I wanted to explore about him, go deeper in. And I think, listen, Ryan Reynolds knocks it out of the park for me. Like, I think he's the perfect, and I do think he gets to do those things in a funny, humorous way. Like, when I see it in those things, it's like, oh yeah, if I thought of doing it that way, talk about love in a funny way, that's awesome. By the way, I have not had a chance to tell you, but I love your Darth Vader shirt. I've been looking at it the whole time.
Oh yeah, no, I was just adjusting it there. Is that the back was bothering me. I have this tag at the back. Yeah, of course, you have to wear the Star Wars shirt.
Gotta wear the Star Wars shirt, 100%. I will say something religious, and I know you had Robbie Thompson on, who is a diehard Star Wars fan, and probably one of my favorite people in the world. So I know he'd tell me to hush my mouth and be quiet. But when I was growing up as a kid, I was blown away by Indiana Jones. That was the movie that for me changed everything. And I love Star Wars, but Star Wars is my close second, where number one would be Indiana Jones, which I know is blasphemy to Robbie Thompson. But so
I'm afraid to mess with my camera here, but I have an Indiana Jones poster just up there. I'm not sure if you can see it, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, there you go.
You just have to, So of course I've got that Indy Jones poster there. But yeah, so like, I'm of course Star Wars. So did you grow up a huge Indiana Jones fan?
I did. I'll watch even the bad ones. I don't care. At the end of the day, every time that movie's on, it doesn't matter where it is in the movie, I stop what I'm doing and I watch it. It was on the other night, 1 a.m, and I knew, man, I'm up for the next hour and a half. I got to see it. Close your eyes, Marion. Are
you excited for the new Indiana Jones film?
I'm always excited. There are two things that really excite me: Indiana Jones movies and James Bond. I love James Bond. I've been waiting over a year and a half to see the new Bond. I can't wait to see it. I love Daniel Craig as Bond, so I'm super excited.
He's amazing. I only got into James Bond recently, but I saw Skyfall and it blew me away. It was amazing. And the bad guy, I think his name's Silva. His name slips me, but when he delivers this monologue and he pulls out his fake teeth and his face all droopy, it's amazing. But yeah, you excited for the James Bond film? No Time to Die?
Giant fan, and I've been really blessed and fortunate to sort of see Daniel Craig's turn, because I think he really changed the franchise around and went back to the old Sean Connery way. And I grew up with Roger Moore, who I love, but after a while became a character, and somebody who doesn't get the credit they deserve, because early as Timothy Dalton. Some of Timothy Dalton stuff just was too early. It would have played much better with a more modern day audience. Go watch Lice and Revolt. There's so many great Bond stuff and everything like that. So yeah. So, and by the way, enjoyed Pierce Brosnan when he did it too. It's just Daniel Craig brings such a gritty realism to it. Casino Royale is one of my favorite Bond movies of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to interview one of the villains from one of James Bond. Andreas Wisniewski played Necros, who's in Timothy Dalton's, I think, Living Daylights, but at the end he falls out of the plane. So we touched on that. But yeah, getting to talk to him, it really opened my eyes. So then I started watching the James Bond films and it was amazing. But is there any other obscure film franchises that you just love?
Obscure, not obscure. I am a diehard Rocky fan. I have seen every Rocky movie that there ever was. I can do monologues from Rocky 3, when Apollo Creed walks in and literally is like, when you beat nothing or nobody, not even my kids, the only way to get it back is get that eye of the tiger. It's like, I just love those movies. My kids laugh because I cry at the end of Rocky 1 every time. And he's like, Adrian, and she's Rocky. And she's like, they're running through the thing. It's like tears. My kids just look and wait for me to just start crying. The movie just emotionally is so thing to me. And then my favorite movie of maybe all time is a real cheese ball, but a love is a movie called Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves. If you have not seen it, you should watch it. It is about time travel. It's about love. It's a great. Shanoz Watt is the director who I had the pleasure of working with in TV, but called Somewhere in Time. Watch it with your mom and dad. I guarantee you'll love it.
Is Yo-Yo in it?
Yo-Yo is in it in my mind, in my fan fiction, but he has not made it yet into the movie.
I'm just gonna assume that in every comic you wrote, Yo-Yo is in the background somewhere, and it's basically canon. You know, it's just creeping in the corner.
I'm gonna bring him back one way or another.
You just have to.
Yo-Yo will return.
Yeah, that's canon now. You're legally obliged to do that because you've mentioned it here. So I'll just be reading every all of your comics, waiting for that. I was speaking of comic books. You also got to work on Luke Cage. I think it's like this Luke Cage noir series, was it?
Again, it was really unbelievable sort of experience. And it's crazy. In some ways, it was the first thing I ever wrote with, and something I did with Mike Benson, who had helped me break into comics, which I'm always forever thankful for. But at the end of the day, it was, again, being able to do Luke Cage. I love noir movies and I love the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. Like I love that time. So to be able to put it through that lens and that prism and sort of write this great story about the Harlem Renaissance and sort of Luke Cage and sort of what does it mean to be a hero and all that stuff. I read it, and listen, it's always put in the top 5 all like greatest Luke Cage stories ever told, which I'm so proud of. Like it's actually funny enough that you bring it up. It's probably one of the top 3 things I'm the most proud of writing in comics. You know, like really? I just think, yeah, that and Suicide Squad probably the other, and Teen Titans. I mean, I really proud of all that work, but Luke Cage noir, even more than Deadpool, I'm really super proud of the work we did on that book because I feel like it. And Sean Martinborough's art is unbelievable.
Brilliant, man.
And we're both 2 kids from the Bronx, so big ups to Co-op City. Sean Martinborough, amazing artist, always blew me away with his work. So yeah, it's a book I'm super proud of.
Yeah, and I can definitely see why. But before we finish up, I'd love to touch on some of your creator-owned work. You got to do work on Rough Riders. So how did that come about, and what was it like to get to work on your own series?
So again, it's really interesting because Mike Martz went on to go get permission to use Harley Quinn at DC. He went on to help form this company called Aftershock Comics.
Oh, brilliant company.
Yeah, and when we met for lunch at Comic-Con, he brought a couple of his partners and they said, is there any books you're interested in doing? You know, and I always had the idea for Rough Riders in my head and was really something I always wanted to do. I just thought, you know, taking these, like when I was growing up as a kid, there used to be a thing called encyclopedias. And so
what's this word known as?
Exactly. What an encyclopedia. And then we put it on our fax machine.
Is this a fancy word for technology back then?
Technology, exactly. But he would come, and my grandparents actually got it for me as a gift. So every month a different letter would come, A, B, C. And it would literally list. And as a kid, I don't know why, maybe I was just bored. I would read the encyclopedia. I would just start from everything. And I remember the first time I ever saw a picture of Houdini, and I was like, who is this? You know, I was a Jewish kid in New York. He was Jewish. He was from New York. And he turned around, and this was the first superhero for me. Like, this was a guy that I saw, and I could not believe how amazing he was and how great he was. So I turned around and just like fell in love with him. And there was a picture of him with and then I started to figure out how they met each other, and I started reading about Teddy Roosevelt. I was like, oh my God, I love this character. And then I'm a big boxing fan. So I knew about Jack Johnson and loved his character through a character named Stanley Ketchel. So all these, and then I just love history. And then Annie Oakley and all that stuff. So it's like, what if they were all living at the same time? And then Edison, I was like, what if all of them were together? And what if all of them had an adventure together? And thus came up Rough Riders, which I loved writing. Again, Patrick Olaf was the artist. Amazing fantastic artist. Love him, amazing human being. I've been really lucky with artists. He was great. Gabe, who did all the stuff, turned around, and he was also pretty amazing. And then after Gabe, I turned around and I did a lot of other stuff and everything like that. Yeah, you can come in, brother. Okay. So yeah, I was able to turn around and do, a lot of different stuff, and really a lot. Aftershock was a great company to sort of do it with. So they were very helpful.
Oh wow, yeah. And so I imagine it was a bit more freeing getting to work on your own series as opposed to working for DC or Marvel, because they have very strict rules. So was it more freeing for you to get to work on your own series?
Of course, man. Yeah, totally. Like there's no rules. You can sort of do whatever you want. I mean, I was able to sort of, and I had the cachet to do it. So cool that they let me do things. So it was really just being able to sort of do whatever I want. I mean, Mike would sometimes come to me and say, "Oh, this versus that," and I'm 100% right. Mike's such a good editor, but overall, it was very freeing to do your own stuff. So I was able to do that and do the normals and I was able to do a lot of different things, which really was incredibly rewarding and helpful. And yeah, I think I did 5 or 6 IP books, which was a lot of fun, and maybe a few more down the line coming.
Oh wow, really? I'm looking forward to that. We also got to work on a few other comics, such as Lollipop Kids. I was like to get to work on that.
It's good because it was me and my son. My son
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we were able to sort of write it together and create it and mix sort of his life and my life. Growing up as a city kid in New York, I always thought, I love Spielberg movies, but they always took place in suburbia. I was an inner city kid. It was like, where's our story? Where's the story about like kids running around New York City and doing that and all those things? And to have that opportunity and chance was great. And a chance to work with my son at the time, who was 14, and to be able to do the book with him and sort of him learn the ropes, and him also just being so creative and having so many great ideas, it just made everything so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, and one more, the last time I'm going to touch on Monster Hunter. What's it like to get to work on that?
It's great. Olivia Corrado Briggs is a great writer. Somebody I wanted to work with was a television writer who I had brought in. I'd met in Singapore, but knew from New York. So it was chance. I always wanted to sort of do this Mary Shelley book. I always had this idea, what if Mary Shelley, like, who's to me the greatest, genre author of all time, who, wrote this an unbelievable horror book while she was still a teenager. How did a young woman, write this book and everything? It was like, what if she lived it? What if like actually her story was living it? But I also knew I needed a female perspective on it, and always was looking to work with something with Olivia on. So Olivia was like the perfect person to bring in, and just killed it, slayed it. So it was a lot of fun writing that book, and a lot going on with that book now. So fingers crossed there'll be some announcements in the future about it. And meanwhile, we're moving on and doing another book right now, which is we're going to now take the same sort of idea and visit Bram Stoker and Dracula and sort of like Monster Hunter. So we're trying to do a series where we're going to visit different writers and literature creators of monsters, and then tell their story and how their story intertwined with the story that they ended up telling. So right now we just closed the deal, and we're going to do another one for we're going to do Bram Stoker next.
Amazing, guys. A little exclusive.
And we're announcing it right here, Daniel, for you, buddy. We're letting the world know.
Exclusive, I imagine like CBR or Nerdist is going to report on this in like about an hour. So, get those sweet royalty checks coming my way.
Coming your way. And you know what? Here's the best part of it. Yo-Yo's going to be a vampire. So
that's canon. Yes. My whole life I've waited for this one singular moment about Yo-Yo. I'm so happy, it's like it's his birthright being a vampire. It doesn't make sense, not really, but it has to happen. You can work it into the story somehow. Yeah, but definitely. But my final 3 questions: have you noticed improvement as a writer? Like, because I know obviously you've gotten to do quite a lot. So do you look back at some of your earlier work and think, oh, I could have done this, or oh, I should have done this, or?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly getting better, you're constantly getting more experience, and you look back. I try not to look back, but when I do see something sometimes, I'll look at it and go, man, I could have wrote that better, or now how to use panels better, or how to sort of lay out something better, all the time. But I think that's most writers. I think you keep learning as you get better, and you refine. I think we talk about it all the time with my fellow writers. You want to learn how to say less with more with less. Apologize.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. And like, I think, in a million years, you'll be remembered for the one who created Yo-Yo. So you can take some solace in that. But so like, was it tough for you to make that transition from TV into comics, or was it rather easy for you?
I think because I've read comics all my life, I sort of so understood it. And I just think all storytelling is a beginning, middle, and end. It's just, I also do a lot of advertising, commercial stuff. And, sometimes I'm telling these stories in 30 seconds, it's like, it's just different mediums. But, what's great about TV series and comic books, it's just you're doing it in less pages. Is it's those cliffhangers and how do you get people to come back and watch the next episode. It set me up to work for Netflix, because that's all about like how do you hook them in and how do you hook them out and how do you get them to click and watch the next episode.
Yeah. And so then what was it like getting to work on TV shows such as Supernatural and then going on to work in a comic book series? Was there an adjustment period for you? And what was it like to get to work on Supernatural?
No real adjustment period, like it's like I said, it was just telling stories and just telling stories in a different way. Less pages, really more, how do you tell it in a shorter version of it? And working for Supernatural is amazing. I got to work with Eric Kripke, who created The Boys, I learned a lot at his feet. Ben Edlund, who created The Tick, was in the writer's room. I got to meet Robbie and become great friends with Robbie Thompson, who's one of the smartest young writers I know. Andrew Dabb, who ended up going running the show, and now is doing Resident Evil for Netflix, is amazing. Jenny Klein, who turned around and is like now all over the place and doing great and having an amazing career, and Sarah Gamble. I mean, it was such a great group of young people who just love genre. And so it was so exciting to just work with such smart people and learn from them and create. So but love for that show and doing that show. And I was a big fan walking into the show. So, once I got to write on a show that I loved, and Sam and Dean, and then Jensen and Jared being the amazing human beings they are, and Misha, it was like, it was a no-brainer, and create some great stuff and be able to be part of that canon in that world. And, I always joke, unless I do something bigger, my obituary will be Supernatural writer Adam Glass passes away at the ripe age of 103. But yeah.
Creator of Yo-Yo.
Yeah, exactly. But we're going to change that, you and me.
Of course, a paradigm shift to the industry. Yo-Yo will just be the new face, Who needs another Batman story when we can just do a Yo-Yo mini-series, Because I think he's such an interesting character, when you look at psychosis, why would someone deal with yo-yos, What is it about that aspect, It's like 100%. Greatest piece of literature. But so yeah, my second last question, I know you're probably finished with like working for big companies, but is there that one character, like your dream comic book character, that you just love to work on, like that one character you've never gotten to write for that you would just love to write for? Is there?
Well, there's two things, right? One is it's really just about time, right? Like, I always said, like, I would love to write Batman, but Batman's a full-time job. Like, if I wrote Batman, I have to quit every other job, and then my wife would kill me because I can't afford to just write Batman. But it is, it's a quintessential character. I would love to write a Batman, monthly series. That'd be unbelievable. It's really the last thing. Also love Daredevil. I would have said the same thing. Like, by the way, I say this and I hope to God they never come to me, because I would be so torn about what to do. I know exactly what I would do with Daredevil, by the way, but
yes.
Those two characters are probably the closest to my heart. And then there's like weird characters like Ragman, who I love. And I love the character again, because it's like when I was growing up, he was, there's so few heroes when you're a kid growing up Jewish in New York City. Ragman was Jewish. He worked in a junkyard. His father owned a junkyard. My uncle owned a junkyard. So growing up as a kid, and I just always loved this idea of this sort of these spirits that are in the rags and all that stuff. So, I've actually pitched Ragman a bunch of times. I've never gotten a chance to write it, but
Ragman and Yo-Yo.
I was just going to say, I was going to team them up. It's a no-brainer.
Great minds think alike. We should just get this yoke rolling, We already have it off the ground. We can
save Yo-Yo, hashtag save Yo-Yo.
Yeah. By Adam Glass himself, you have to get that trending on Twitter. But yeah, of course. So you just touched on there, getting to work, like you'd love to work with Batman or Daredevil. My favorite villain of all time, are definitely up there, is Bullseye. I just think he's such an obscure villain that I just love him so much. But Batman, who's your favorite Batman villain, and who's your favorite Daredevil villain?
Oh, that's really funny. Well, I mean, how can you not love Kingpin and Bullseye? I mean, like you just said, two of them, but I love Elektra. I love all the characters in that story. I mean, I was growing up in New York City, so this idea of like, just like Spider-Man, like New York City characters that felt like they're living in your backyard, like were so awesome. But, I love all those. I love Elektra because I think it's the Romeo and Juliet. It's like the thing you love is the very thing kill you. And I love that, I love all the Catholicism that runs through, even though I'm not Catholic. Many Catholic friends, and I loved all that stuff that played out in Daredevil and Matt Murdock's life, and the Catholic guilt and the church and all those things. Like, I just thought, I know you have no idea what I'm talking about being Irish, but
oh no, what?
So
money messing, of course.
Exactly. So yeah, so I love the idea of Elektra. And then for Batman, the Joker is the greatest villain for a reason. It's like you can't not recognize that they need each other. And this idea of the Joker, I just love. I've always loved the Joker. I loved him when he was the Red Hood. I read every single, probably Joker story ever. Though funny enough, I hated him with Harley because I thought, I didn't like the relationship between those two. I didn't like the way he treated Harley.
Yeah, and you wrote him a bit in the Suicide Squad, didn't you? Or was that a tie-in?
Nope,
Yeah?
I did. I wrote him.
Was it fun for you to get to write for him?
Oh, 100%. I always wanted to write the Joker, so I loved writing him. It was totally fun to write him. And then also to sort of explore him and Harley's relationship and have Harley sort of be an equal person pushing back and saying, this doesn't work for me. And sort of like, really sort of giving it to the Joker, which I like doing too.
Yeah, and brilliant. And so my last and final question, because I've already taken up so much of your time. If anyone is looking to get into comics, what advice would you have for them, or just even screenwriting? What's that advice you give to upcoming writers?
Listen, writing's about exactly that, writing. I know I meet so many people who turn around and say, I want to be a writer. I'm like, what are you writing? Like, nothing right now. Or I've been in the same script for 3 years. Like, you have to finish it. Like, you have to beginning, middle, and end finish it. Even if it's not ready, you have to put it out into the world, because true writers write and they keep writing, and all you do is write, rewrite, write. I mean, I'm constantly writing. So if you want to be a writer, just start knocking those stories out. Look, I say this, everyone has a story to tell. How many people have the discipline to actually write it and do it? Like, that's the difference between writers and not writers. So, I mean, listen, we need new voices. We need all kinds of voices. The next generation's coming up right now. So, I can't wait to sit back one day and read one of yours, Daniel. I'm gonna sit there, Daniel Fee, and it's gonna be the Yo-Yo book. I know.
How did you know?
I know. You're gonna bring him back for me.
Did you hack my email? How did you get that script? It's only 800 pages long, so I appreciate
exactly.
you.
Fan fiction. I know. I read it. Read it on your website.
I'm just waiting for my reply from Jim Lee. I assume his email must be busted or something. I've been sending it a couple of times a day. I know they love when you do that, so I'm just waiting for my response.
Maybe you shouldn't name it Yo-Yo and I. Maybe you should change the title. That's my only note.
Yeah, of course, it could go any way. But absolutely, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I don't think we could end on a better note. Before we finish up, are you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? Do you have a website or anything like that?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at AdamGlass44. And then on Instagram, it's Adam Ian Glass, which is ADAM, and then IAN, and then GLASS. Adam Ian Glass. That's my middle name, and you can find me there.
Absolutely. Everyone make sure to go check out Adam's work. And I would also highly recommend, if you're a Suicide Squad fan, or if you enjoyed the new film and you're looking to get into the Suicide Squad, perfect place to start, the New 52. You can pick up volume 1, Kicked in the Teeth. I assume for your local comic book store, you can find it anywhere, or you can pick up the single issues. I highly recommend you do. It's one of my favorite series of all time. And I'm not just saying that because Adam's on. I genuinely love it, and I know you will too. I believe there's 3 different volumes you can get. But yeah, if you're a Suicide Squad fan, go pick up his work. Or you can pick up his other comics like Teen Titans, Deadpool, Luke Cage, Rough Riders, Lollipop Kids, and Monster Hunter. I would highly recommend you pick up all of those and check out his TV shows. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Adam, I'll talk to you a little bit here while we're off the air. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you on the next video. Please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at SamboGizmo1, and please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. Link for that in the description as always. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Stay safe. Bye.